The interview room fell silent as she stood up, hands trembling, her heart racing. The mocking whispers faded, replaced by a heavy tension in the air. They had underestimated her, laughed at her worn-out resume, assumed she was just another applicant who wouldn't make it past the door. But as she locked eyes with the CEO, her voice was steady, unwavering. "Let me tell you who I really am." For a split second, the CEO's confident smile faltered, and his eyes narrowed. He, along with the others sitting around the polished oak table, had expected another nervous candidate to grovel for the job, but she wasn't groveling. She wasn't even apologizing for the outdated CV that had clearly been mocked just moments before. Instead, she was standing there, her back straight, exuding an unexpected confidence that made the room uneasy. The young woman, Emma Foster, wasn't the kind of person they'd expected to walk through their door. She wasn't wearing a designer suit like the others, nor did she have a resume packed with Ivy League degrees. She wasn't polished in the way they'd hoped for in their next senior executive hire. Emma had always felt like the odd one out. The first in her family to attend college, she had worked tirelessly to support herself. She had spent countless hours in night classes while holding down 2 jobs, one as a waitress and another in a small office. Her resume reflected all that. No fancy internships, no high-profile company names, just hard work. But something about that didn't sit right with the hiring panel. They had dismissed her before she even opened her mouth. Emma swallowed, keeping her composure as she surveyed the room. Her interviewer, the CEO of a billion-dollar tech company, looked back at her as if he was weighing her worth based on appearances alone. "You're sure you're ready for this position, Miss Foster?" The CEO asked, his tone dripping with condescension. "Because from what I see here, you don't exactly have the experience we're looking for." Emma paused, taking a deep breath. The room had been filled with dismissive laughter just moments ago, but now there was an almost oppressive stillness, hanging in the air as though everyone was holding their breath, waiting for her response. "You want to know who I really am?" she repeated, her voice firm. The CEO shifted in his seat. The other members of the interview panel exchanged confused glances. Emma's chest tightened, but she wasn't afraid. She had faced far worse in life than a room full of arrogant executives. She wasn't here to beg for a job. She had something much more important to prove. With one last glance around the table, Emma spoke. "You see, I may not have the degrees or the glossy resume, but I have something far more valuable." She paused, gathering her thoughts. "I've built companies. I've turned ideas into real businesses. I know how to survive when everything is stacked against me. And if you gave me the chance, I would show you that I could run this company better than any of you could ever imagine." A murmur of disbelief swept across the room. Emma felt the weight of their eyes on her, but she didn't flinch. She had lived a life full of challenges, battles, and setbacks. This room of executives, with their polished suits and perfect resumes, were just another obstacle to overcome. She wasn't here to make them like her. She was here to prove she was the best. Before the CEO could respond, Emma continued, "In fact, I've been running a multi-million-dollar startup for the last 3 years. The company's grown faster than anything you've seen in the tech world, but I did it on my own. With no investors, no family money, just pure grit and determination." The silence was thick now. A slight chuckle broke from one of the panel members, but Emma didn't let it deter her. "Are you trying to tell us you're a CEO?" the CEO asked. Finally breaking the silence, Emma smiled, a small, knowing smile. "Not just a CEO, the CEO." There was a long pause. The panel exchanged glances again, but this time there was no laughter, just the dawning realization that they might have made a grave mistake. "You've been running a company." The CEO's voice had lost its earlier arrogance, replaced by a cautious curiosity. Emma nodded. "Yes, and now I want to take on something bigger, something that challenges me. That's why I'm here." The CEO looked skeptical. "Why leave a successful company to join ours?" Because I want to see if I can push myself even further, Emma said, her voice full of determination. And because I know I can make this company not just survive, but thrive. There was a beat of silence, and then the room seemed to snap back into motion. The CEO leaned back in his chair, studying Emma. His earlier mocking expression had vanished, replaced by something more respectful. "You know," he said, his tone shifting, "we don't just hire anyone here, we only want the best. Are you sure you can handle what we expect?" Emma didn't hesitate. "I can handle anything you throw at me. I've had to fight for everything in my life. This job will be no different." For a moment, the CEO said nothing. His eyes locked onto hers, as if searching for any sign of weakness. But all he saw was strength, real strength. "All right, Miss Foster," the CEO said after a long moment, his voice low but serious. "We'll give you a chance, but understand this. If you fail, you're out. No second chances." Emma smiled, but there was no arrogance in it. "I don't fail." Emma left the interview room with her head held high, a small smile playing on her lips. She'd done it. Against all odds, she had impressed them. But even as she walked out of the building, her thoughts remained sharp and calculating. She wasn't naive. She knew that this wasn't the end of the road. It was just the beginning. The CEO, Robert Grant, had given her a chance. But there was something in his eyes, something deeper than mere curiosity. He had seen something in her, something he hadn't expected, but he hadn't fully understood it yet. She wasn't just a woman who could run a business. She was a woman with a story, one that most people would never believe. It was late that night, when Emma sat alone in her apartment, the soft glow of the city lights filtering through her window. She pulled out her phone and glanced at the messages. From her team back at her startup. They had congratulated her on the interview, but there was no way she was going to tell them the truth about what had happened. Not yet. Not until she was certain of her next move. Her phone buzzed again, but this time it wasn't a message from the team. It was a call. Her heart skipped a beat when she saw the name on the screen. Mom. She hadn't spoken to her mother in nearly 2 months. Ever since she'd left home to pursue her career, their relationship had become strained. Her mother had never understood why Emma was so determined to leave everything behind and make her own way in the world. The family had always been poor, and Emma's decision to climb out of that life had left her feeling like an outsider. Still, her mother's voice always brought her a sense of comfort, no matter how distant they had become. "Hello?" Emma answered, trying to hide the crack in her voice. Emma, her mother's voice, was thick with emotion. "I saw the news today about your interview." Emma's chest tightened. "How did you find out?" "Your name's all over the place, sweetheart. They're saying you're going to work for Grant Tech. You're going to work for him, aren't you?" Emma's breath caught in her throat. "I haven't decided anything yet. It's just an interview, Mom. I don't know if they're going to offer me the job." But even as she spoke, she knew that was a lie. She could feel the weight of the decision pressing on her. This was more than just a job. This was an opportunity to prove to herself, and to everyone else, that she could succeed, no matter where she came from. "You have to be careful, Emma," her mother warned, her voice growing more urgent. "That man, he's dangerous. You don't know what you're getting into." Emma frowned, sitting up straighter. "What are you talking about? What do you mean?" Her mother's voice lowered, filled with fear. "Robert Grant. I've heard things, Emma. You don't know his past. You don't know what he's really capable of." Emma's heart skipped a beat. "What kind of things, Mom? What do you know?" There was a long pause before her mother spoke again. Her words, heavy with fear. "I'm not going to tell you over the phone, but please don't go near him. Please don't work for him." Emma felt a chill run down her spine. She wanted to dismiss her mother's warning, but something in her voice, the sheer fear, made it impossible to ignore. "Mom, what are you talking about? What does he have to do with us?" But before her mother could answer, the line went dead. Next morning, Emma found herself back in the sleek conference room of Grant Tech. The interview panel had been replaced by a few key executives, and the CEO, Robert Grant, was seated at the head of the table. Emma was early, as usual, and she could feel the tension in the air the moment she walked through the door. "Good morning, Miss Foster," Robert said, his tone neutral but calculating. "I trust you had a good night's rest?" Emma nodded, trying to read the man in front of her. There was something about him that she couldn't quite place. He was charismatic, yes, but there was also something cold about him, something that made her instincts prick up. She knew he wasn't the kind of person to let emotions get in the way of business. "Let's get straight to the point," Robert continued, motioning for Emma to sit. "We've decided to offer you a position with Grant Tech, but before you say yes, we need to know that you understand what you're getting into." Emma sat down, keeping her expression neutral. "I'm not here to waste your time, Mr. Grant. I'm ready for whatever you have to offer." He studied her for a moment before leaning forward, his fingers steepled in front of him. "Good, because this is a high-stakes position. We don't just hire anyone. We need someone who can handle pressure, who can think on their feet, and who isn't afraid to take risks." Emma's pulse quickened. "I'm all those things," Robert nodded slowly. "I know you are, but there's one thing you don't know, Miss Foster. We're not just a tech company. We have interests in many industries, some of them, let's say, unconventional. And I'm not going to lie to you. There are risks involved, more than you can possibly imagine." Emma leaned in, her curiosity piqued. "What kind of risks?" Before Robert could answer, one of the executives, a tall man with sharp features and a grim expression, interrupted. "Mr. Grant, I think she's ready to hear it. She deserves to know." Robert glanced at him, then back at Emma. "Fine, but know this. If you accept this position, you're entering a world where things are not always as they seem. There are forces at play here that go far beyond the tech industry. There are secrets, and if you can't handle those secrets, you won't last long." Emma felt the hairs on the back of her neck stand up. She had heard rumors of shady dealings, of power plays that went beyond the boardroom. But nothing prepared her for what she was hearing now. "What exactly are you saying?" Robert leaned back, his eyes narrowing as he spoke. "I'm saying that if you take this job, you'll have to be willing to make hard choices. You'll be forced to confront things you never thought possible. But if you succeed, you'll have power beyond your wildest dreams." For a moment, Emma didn't speak. Her mind raced. This wasn't just about a job anymore. This was a game, one that she might not fully understand, but one she couldn't back away from now. The next few days felt like a whirlwind to Emma. After the intense conversation with Robert Grant, she had spent every waking moment analyzing his words, trying to decipher what he had meant by secrets and risks. She had already known that joining a company like Grant Tech wouldn't be simple. But now the stakes had become higher than she ever could have imagined. It wasn't just about running a successful business anymore. It was about survival. And Emma wasn't sure if she was ready for the kind of survival that Robert was hinting at. As the hours ticked by, Emma's phone buzzed incessantly with messages from her team back at her own startup, but her mind was elsewhere. She had just received the official offer letter from Grant Tech, and the weight of it was almost suffocating. It was everything she had ever wanted in terms of career growth: more money, more power, and the chance to prove herself on a global scale. But there was something gnawing at her. That night, Emma sat alone in her apartment, her legs curled up under her as she stared at the offer letter in her hands. The room was dimly lit, and the only sound was the occasional hum of the city outside her window. She had always been ambitious, but now the reality of what she was about to step into felt like a different kind of ambition, one that would require her to abandon every principle she had ever held dear. Her phone buzzed again, this time with a call from an unknown number. Emma hesitated for a moment before answering. "Hello, Miss Foster?" The voice on the other end was calm, measured, but with an underlying tension that sent a chill down Emma's spine. "I'm Detective Harris. I need to speak with you about Robert." Grant, Emma's breath caught in her throat. "What about him?" she asked, her heart hammering in her chest. "You don't know what you're walking into," Detective Harris said, his voice low and urgent. "I can't say too much over the phone, but I suggest you reconsider accepting that offer from Grant Tech." Emma's mind raced. "Why? What do you mean? What's going on?" The detective hesitated for a moment before continuing. "There are things about Grant that you need to understand, things that go far beyond business. He's not the man he appears to be. You need to tread carefully." Emma's pulse quickened. "I'm not sure I understand. Are you saying he's involved in something illegal?" The detective's voice dropped even lower. "I'm not saying anything specific, but let's just say there's a reason Robert Grant is as successful as he is, and it's not because of his business acumen alone. People who have crossed him have ended up gone, missing. Don't say I didn't warn you." The line went dead before Emma could respond. She sat frozen, staring at the phone in her hand, her mind a whirl of confusion and fear. Was this some kind of warning? A threat? Or was the detective trying to protect her from something much bigger than she realized? The next morning, Emma tried to shake off the feeling of unease. She had a meeting scheduled with Robert Grant, and this time she wasn't sure what to expect. She had already seen the glimmer of something dark in his eyes, but she hadn't been prepared for the detective's call. Now she was uncertain about every decision she'd made up until that point. As she stepped into the gleaming skyscraper of Grant Tech, the nerves she'd pushed aside the first time were back, stronger than before. This wasn't just another corporate meeting. This was about a decision that could change the course of her life, and perhaps even put her in danger. When she entered Robert's office, she found him sitting behind his massive desk, reviewing a stack of papers. His suit was impeccably tailored, and his presence exuded an aura of power that was almost tangible. He looked up as Emma entered, his sharp eyes studying her for a brief moment. "Miss Foster," he said with a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. "I trust you've made your decision?" Emma nodded, her stomach twisting. "I've been thinking a lot about your offer, Mr. Grant, and there are some things I need to know." Robert raised an eyebrow, clearly intrigued. "What kind of things?" "I've heard some troubling rumors about you, about the company," Emma said, her voice steady despite the turbulence inside her. "I need to know what I'm getting myself into." For a moment, Robert said nothing. His gaze locked onto hers, and Emma could see the calculation in his eyes. Then he leaned back in his chair, his fingers steepled in front of him. "You've heard rumors?" he asked, his voice tinged with amusement. "Well, Miss Foster, let me tell you something. Rumors are exactly that, nothing more than whispers from people who don't know what they're talking about." Emma's heartbeat quickened, but she refused to back down. "I've been told that you don't play by the rules, that there's more going on at Grant Tech than anyone knows." Robert's expression didn't change. "I'm a businessman, Miss Foster. I do what I must to succeed. But everything I do is legal, everything. But that's just it," Emma pushed, her pulse racing. "I'm not worried about what's legal. I'm worried about what's right, what's ethical. If this company has a dark side, I need to know before I commit to anything." Robert's eyes narrowed, and for the first time, Emma saw a flicker of anger in his gaze. "Let me make this clear, Miss Foster. You're in no position to ask questions like that. You want to join this company, you need to prove yourself. And when you do, I'll decide if you're worthy of knowing anything more." Emma didn't flinch, though her mind was racing. She could feel the danger in the air, thick, palpable, and undeniable. He wasn't going to tell her anything, and that only made her more determined to uncover the truth. "I understand," she said, her voice cool, But don't mistake my questions for weakness. If I accept this job, it's because I'm willing to do what it takes to succeed, no matter what that entails." Robert's lips curled into a smile, one that was filled with both admiration and something darker. "Good. Then welcome to the team, Miss Foster. You'll fit in just fine." As Emma left Robert's office, the weight of the decision she had just made settled in her chest like a stone. She had accepted the job, not because she fully understood what was at stake, but because she couldn't walk away. The offer was too big, too tempting. And yet, she couldn't shake the feeling that she had just stepped into something far more dangerous than she could have ever imagined. The days following Emma's acceptance of the job offer were a blur of meetings, contracts, and introductions to key players within Grant Tech. The company's sleek, modern headquarters reflected the polished exterior of Robert Grant himself, pristine, cold, and imposing. But behind that perfection, Emma felt the growing sense of unease she'd had since the moment she walked through the doors. The deal had been sealed, but Emma was still uncertain of the true nature of the company she had just joined. Every meeting felt scripted, every conversation calculated. The people around her were highly intelligent, but there was an almost palpable sense of fear that hovered in the air, an understanding that no one really questioned Robert Grant's authority. No one asked the difficult questions. They just did their jobs, performed their roles, and avoided crossing lines they couldn't see. Emma couldn't escape the nagging feeling that something was wrong. She had tried to push it down, to focus on the job she had worked so hard to secure, but the rumors she had heard and the detective's warning kept resurfacing, creeping into her mind at night. What kind of man was Robert Grant, really? And what was the cost of being part of his empire? On her second week at Grant Tech, Emma received an unexpected phone call. It was Detective Harris again, his voice grave. "Miss Foster, I know you've made your decision, but I urge you to be cautious," he said, his words urgent. "I've been looking into Robert Grant further, and I've uncovered some troubling things that go far beyond business. He's not just a businessman, he's connected to people and organizations that you wouldn't want to be associated with." Emma's breath caught in her throat. "What do you mean? What are you saying?" "I'm saying that Robert Grant has ties to some dangerous circles. I can't go into details right now, but I've been trying to find someone who can help. People have tried to take him down before, and they've ended up, well, they've disappeared." Emma's heart raced as the weight of the detective's words sank in. "Are you threatening me?" "No," Harris replied quickly. "I'm warning you. I'm trying to save you from making a mistake, but you need to make your own decision. All I can do is point you in the right direction. If you want to know more, meet me tomorrow night. I'll give you everything I've found." The line went silent for a moment. Emma's mind was a whirlwind of thoughts. Could the detective be trusted? Could she risk taking such a leap, or was he merely feeding her paranoia? But she knew deep down that something wasn't right. The pieces were starting to fit together, and she had to know the truth. The following evening, Emma met Detective Harris at a quiet cafe in the city, one far from the glossy offices of Grant Tech. Harris was waiting for her at a corner table, his face hidden in the shadows. As Emma approached, he stood up, his expression tense. "Have a seat," he said quietly, gesturing to the chair across from him. "I'm going to show you something that might change everything you think you know about Robert Grant." Emma sat down, her heart thudding in her chest as she waited for him to speak. He pulled out a thick file from his bag and slid it across the table. "This is everything I've been able to gather. Grant Tech is more than just a tech company. It's a front for a much larger operation. Robert Grant is involved in illegal activities, money laundering, blackmail, even organized crime." Emma felt a wave of shock and disbelief wash over her. "No, that's impossible. He's a businessman. He's a philanthropist. People admire him." That's the image he wants you to see, Harris replied, his voice low. But underneath all that, he's not who you think he is. People have been working for him without knowing the truth. Your colleagues, your new boss, everyone's been kept in the dark. Emma's hands trembled as she flipped open the file. Inside, there were documents, photographs, and news articles detailing Robert Grant's connections to various criminal organizations, names of people who had vanished without a trace, all linked back to Grant's operations. Her stomach churned. How did you get this information? Harris didn't answer directly. Instead, he leaned forward. You need to decide now, Miss Foster. You're in deeper than you realize. If you stay, you risk everything, your career, your safety, maybe even your life. But if you leave, you can't just walk away. Grant doesn't let people go. Emma felt a cold sweat form on the back of her neck. The walls of the cafe seemed to close in on her. She had already taken the job. Could she really walk away now? And if she did, what would happen to her? You can't just drop a bombshell like this and expect me to walk away, Emma said, her voice shaking with a mixture of anger and fear. What do you want me to do? Harris took a deep breath. I'm offering you a way out. I've been in contact with the authorities, but you have to make a choice. You can stay in the dark and play along with his game, or you can help me bring him down. Emma's mind spun as the weight of his words settled over her. Could she risk everything she had worked for? Was it worth throwing away the life she had just started to build, all to bring down a man who seemed untouchable? The decision was monumental. As she left the cafe that night, Emma's thoughts were in turmoil. She was now fully aware of the darkness surrounding Robert Grant. The company she had joined was not the dream job she had imagined. It was a nightmare, one that was slowly consuming her. The next day, she went into the office trying to act normal. But she couldn't ignore the cold, calculating gaze of Robert Grant, watching her from across the room. The tension was unbearable. Her mind raced as she realized that her options were narrowing. As the days went on, the pressure from both sides began to mount. Robert Grant made it clear that he expected her loyalty. He trusted her more than anyone else in the company, and he was already relying on her for important decisions. She couldn't shake the feeling that he was testing her, watching her every move. But Emma was also aware that if she stayed in this game, she would be complicit in whatever dark deeds Robert Grant was orchestrating. There was no way to win. The only question now was how much she was willing to sacrifice in order to escape. It was at that moment, standing in front of her desk late one night, that Emma received an unexpected call. It was Robert. Miss Foster. His voice was cool, but there was an edge to it. I need to speak with you in my office, now. Her heart skipped a beat as she made her way to his office. When she entered, Robert was standing by the window, staring out at the city lights. I've been watching you, he said softly, his back still turned. You've made quite an impression, Emma. I think you're ready for the next step. Before she could respond, Robert turned, his expression unreadable. Tonight, he continued, I need you to prove your loyalty. There's a situation that requires special handling, and you're the one I trust to take care of it. Emma's breath caught in her throat. This was it, the moment she had feared. She had reached the crossroads where she would have to make a decision that could change everything. The end.